morning, church. We are few, but we are still here. We're mighty. The Lord says that He's going to meet with us. When we gather together, when we come to seek Him, He will be known. And so we take that to heart this morning. We have a mess, a whole bundle of announcements and prayers and praises and things, information that we want to get to you, and we're going to do that right here at the beginning. I'll try to get through them as succinctly as we possibly can. We are still looking for a janitor. We do have a couple leads, but if you know somebody, if it's you or it's somebody in the community that's looking for a couple hours a week and a little bit of cash in their pocket, would you send them to Fran or I, and we can follow up on that. Mission Meadows is in the midst of a rough season. They didn't have camp all of last year, and what camp looks like this year is going to be sort of limited, but they're having a work day to try to get ready for the summer, and it is on May the 8th from 9 to 4. They would take you any point during that day if you're available. Lunch is provided, but they just kind of need to know that. So if you want to contact Mindy or Marjorie, really by today, so they can get those numbers in to camp so that they can prepare for that. That'd be great. This is sort of an announcement and a prayer all in one. We've been talking about this. Pastor John Schwart and his wife Nettie, their daughter Beckett, has some medical problems, and she's going to be doing a lot of traveling back and forth to Cleveland. John and Nettie will be as well, obviously. And just as a way to love on them and to care for them, we are putting together a gift basket. And if you would like to give a gift card or a regular card or an actual object or something, Beckett particularly loves art sort of things. If you could get that to Mindy or to me today so that we can collect that stuff by like Saturday and get that to them just as a way to kind of care for them. And so obviously continue to pray for Beckett as well during this time, and John and Nettie. The prayer list seems to continue to grow. I shared when Bev came in, she's like, "How are you?" And I said, again, this week, I just feel like very heavy because it seems like we're not taking things off that prayer list, we're just adding to them. And it just seems like we're in this, after the year we've had, like this is the season that seems like it's hitting hard for our community. And so just some things to be praying about. We've been praying for Bill Winslow. He is in Kinzu after his leg amputation. He has a long road of recovery and rehab. We talked in our email this week to be praying for Linda and Kelly Ferry. Linda got some pretty bad news at the end of last week. She has cancer throughout her body. She did chemo this entire week. I just spoke with her this morning, and again, the heaviness. She's not doing well. She's in she will tell you, she's just in rough shape. She's very weak, and she's tired. And so just be praying, please, for Linda and Kelly. God can still do things, and we believe that. But prayer for peace and comfort for them both in this time. Along those same lines, close friends of ours, Ryan and Christy Lederber, who live in Buffalo, New York. Again, at the end of last week, Christy, in kind of a whirlwind, got these tests back, and she has this very aggressive cancer, and was immediately put in Roswell and started on chemo. Young family, 3 kids. She homeschools the kids. She runs a small business out of their house. I mean this sincerely, and I've said this to them, like, they are just the nicest people you could imagine. They're just kind, and they're God-fearing, and it crushes me to believe what they're going through right now. So if you could be praying for Ryan and Christy. Shannon, there's both a prayer and a praise here. Shannon goes down to Pittsburgh tomorrow for eye surgery. But she thought she was going to have back surgery, and she found out late in the week that she will not have to have back surgery. So there's a praise there. that she's just going to be doing some pain therapy and some recovery there, so that is awesome. We'll continue to pray for Sharon Johnson's mom as she's in the nursing home and kind of on the mend, but it's going to be a slow process, and there's frustration there, right, with not being home and not being with you, and that's a long road to be in there. Got word this week from, my brain just went blank. Julie Boozer, that's who I wanted to say. She had spoken with Nancy, how do you pronounce this last name? Thank you, I was going to mispronounce it. A Girder, that she's back at the nursing home in California. If you didn't get that address and you'd like to send her a note, please come and see me and I'll make sure that we get that. We also asked you to pray this week for this weekend. Friday and Saturday was the Great Lakes Conference annual meeting. On Friday morning was the ministerial meeting for all of the pastors. Friday evening was an awards ceremony and a worship time, and then yesterday was the actual conference meeting. And I've asked Fran to come forth, and Fran was our delegate because nobody else wanted to be. But just to kind of share, she's going to share a little bit about what happened in the meeting yesterday, and then I'll briefly share after her about the ministerial meeting and the awards and things like that. So if you want to use that mic, that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, you can move it.
Good morning, everybody. So I took some notes during yesterday's conference, annual conference, and wanted to share with some of the things that stood out to me. And it was good. It was the first one I attended, and I appreciated being able to listen in and learn all about the GLC and what they do. So one of the first things they discussed was 4 patterns they see with vibrant, missional, healthy covenant churches. 1 is having a clear sense of purpose. 2 is a strong missional identity. 3, a healthy leadership and relationships. And 4, discipleship and mission. So those are the patterns they see in healthy missional covenant churches. They spoke of cohorts available and conferences that were coming up. A few pastors spoke of how their churches navigated through this last year. A couple things that stood out to me were one did a blessing box where people came and put in donations, and others came and took out the donations of what they needed. One church in Ohio created a program called Hang Time. They were providing a place for the kids to play basketball, and that turned into a multicultural program that supports their community and provides a place for the kids to hang out and learn from each other. So these kids are able to see firsthand the grace, learning about relationships, learning from each other, and getting exposure to the gospel. Now I know the question was asked by one of the board members was whether they were seeing an increase in those families going to church. They said not really, but they feel like with them going to where they are, they're getting it through that method. So I thought that was really neat. One pastor shared how his church addressed an unprecedented year that included COVID, political, and racial discord. They are praying and having pop-up worships at the protests. They're giving to those in need. They're doing virtual services and Bible studies, and they're seeing and providing for needs in the community. He summed it up by saying, showing unprecedented grace to those in need during an unprecedented year. Other things shared was, despite the COVID, the GLC started 4 new churches this year. That was compared to only 1 church last year. And there were 2 that closed, and the closing of those helped offset the cost of the 4 that started up this past year. They had directors of 3 camps that shared their experience over the last year and what they did to sustain and continue missional outreach to their communities. Brian Mickey was one of those from our Mission Meadows that spoke, and they also shared a video of Jackie Haynes, who's the current interim director, and she shared the plans for this coming year, and that included day camps for kindergarten through 6th grade and 1 week of junior high. They're doing rentals. Family can rent out cabins and offset by the PPP loan, which was forgiven, and the church closings and other grants. So they kept their budget the same for 2021 and then added 5% for the interim 2022 budget that everybody voted on. The last thing I wanted to share with you is there was a spirited discussion that took place on the topic of the GLC taking that PPP loan. There were a lot of good points made and everyone being able to verbalize their views, with some requesting that the money be sent back, but in the end, no changes were made, no votes for doing anything with that money. So, any questions? Gary? Great Lakes Conference. Yep. Okay, any other questions?
Thanks, Fran.
Thanks, Pastor.
Yes, we are part of the GLC, the Great Lakes Conference. There's a bundle of different conferences. My friend Steve is on the board with me at Mission Meadows, but his church, he lives in Indiana. His church is part of the Central Conference. He was literally on 2 conference meetings at the same time, listening to both, because he was a delegate to the Central Conference, but he was also a delegate to the GLC Conference as part of the Mission Meadows board. So he was doing double duty. It was fun. He showed me a picture of his screen with the 2 videos back and forth. Just real quick, the ministerial meeting obviously is for pastors. It was on Friday morning, and just blessed by the stories of other pastors of their churches advancing the kingdom, of sharing the gospel during a crazy year during this pandemic. The Friday night there was an award ceremony, and they gave out an award. One of the planting pastors got an award. She's just this amazing woman. She's a doctorate. She was a lawyer. She did all these crazy things prior to this church plant, and she just planted in inner city Detroit and literally started in April of last year, right as the pandemic is happening. Like, that was the plan, and she just went with it anyway, and her church has like exploded, and they have like over 100 people showing up now, not even showing up, like showing up digitally in spite of what's happened. Fran mentioned a church closure. The one major church that closed, a really big church, they decided over a period of time to become what's called a legacy church, meaning they took all of the assets of the church and sold everything off and gave all of that to the GLC, which then was able to, they were able to use that money to help plant those 4 churches and do some other things this coming year as well. And the final award they gave, I wanted to share with you. It's an award for resilience and advancing the gospel, and it was given to every covenant church in the GLC. And so we are part of that award for being open, for pivoting, for adjusting to what has come. And so Garth read out this thing, and it's like this, actual plaque. And I said, is it like the Stanley Cup where we all get a week with it this year, where we get to pass it around? And there was no response to that. But I wanted you to be aware of it, that what has happened this past year is unique. You know that. But the fact that we're still here this morning speaks a lot of who we are and our character and what we believe God is going to do and has done and is doing right now. Before we get to our call to worship, I did forget, I wrote it down and it's not on my iPad. Allie did say, one more praise. Let's finish with a strong praise here. Jaren's grandma, who we've been praying for a while, got her report this past week, and the radiologist said he doesn't need to see her for another year, which is great news. She is just a resilient. Allie was just like, I don't even have words to say about how awesome that is. And so we'll finish our time of announcements. I know that was a long bit, but we needed to get through all of that, so we'll finish that way. Let's do our call to worship together this morning. It's pretty short, and we'll move on. God has called us, like Moses prophets in the hills, and the disciples in the cities. Since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely.
Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith.
Amen. the song talks about it, you know, in the joys, but in the sorrows, in the rough roads, and when the days are sunny. After we went through, you know, a list of both joys and concerns and things that are on our head. It was a good reminder, at least for me, if not for you, I hope it was. So last week we started, and this week we will end a little mini-series that we've called Stuff. And last week particularly, we just trying to get you to think about our relentless preoccupation with stuff. And particularly last week we talked about the danger of accumulation. We like stuff, we like to get more stuff, we like having stuff. And having stuff isn't bad, but wanting stuff in and of itself isn't bad, but it's the preoccupation with stuff that can be dangerous. And so last week we said that accumulation promises us three things. It promises us a desire for status, a need for security, and longing for satisfaction. And this accumulation leads to three things. It leads to stress. It leads to, we're trying to protect our thing. We're trying to insure our thing. We're trying to take care of our thing. It leads to substitution. We substitute temporary things that really should be eternal things. And we become a slave to our stuff. And the passage says no one can serve two masters. And then at the end of last week, I gave you three action steps, sort of challenges as we left. And one was every time this week, when you saw a box, you were supposed to pause and be reminded that Jesus is our ultimate treasure. And then I also challenge you to not buy stuff. I don't know about you, that was really hard for me this week. And I will confess that I had to buy something this week that wasn't a normal, just food item. I use this little battery pack for my phone every week to make sure that this doesn't go out in the middle of our service. And my battery pack, I started to use it on Tuesday and realized it was completely done. And I had to have a battery pack for this morning. So I apologize. I broke my own challenge. I had to buy a battery pack this week. So I went on Amazon and I got it quickly. And then the third thing I challenged you was to send an anonymous gift to someone who God put on your mind. I hope that you were able to do one or more of those. I hope that challenged you in some way. As we start today, did anybody do this? I mean, you can just give me a wave. In your, maybe growing up in your family, or maybe as you've had kids in your family, did you have a place in your house where you would measure your kids on a door frame or something like that? Maybe on their birthday or on the first of the year, but did anybody do that? Okay. But you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You've at least seen that as an idea. I told you that I love movies, and there's a movie that I like from the late 90s where there's two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, and their dad is always measuring them on this door frame, and he would write their name and their age. But the younger brother was just bigger and stronger, and so at every age, he was always above his older brother. And it reached a point where even at a younger age, he was taller than his older brother. And it became this animosity thing. And the older brother, they were comparing with each other all the time. And their dad didn't help matters. He would always praise the younger brother as the stronger, the more, active, the more physical. He was always better at everything. We do that. We fall into this trap of comparison. We love especially to compare our stuff. How much stuff do I have? How much stuff do they have? What's the quality of the stuff that they have? What's the quality of the stuff that I have? And so on and so on. We're going to use this morning the same passage in Matthew 6 that we used last week. If you remember, we used, if this is the passage, we used the top part and the bottom part. And we kind of skipped the middle a little bit. So I'm going to reread to you Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 24. And we're going to focus today particularly on the middle part of this. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, your heart will also be. That's pretty straightforward. We understand that. We went through that last week. This is the part that's a little weird. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the other and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Do you have a friend, or it could maybe even be a family member, it could be a sibling, that always seems to be better at you than everything? At everything they do, they just seem to always be a little better. I have already confessed this to him personally, so I'm just going to use it as an example to you as well. Pastor PJ, who's now the lead pastor at the Sugar Grove Free Methodist Church, years ago, when I came back to Warren around 2000, we were doing a small group together, and it was this group of guys, and we met every Monday night, and we were all in our 20s, and we were all young and dumb and stupid, and we would meet, and we did life together, and we shared our lives, and we cared for each other, and we prayed for each other, and we did devotions with each other. But we also did a lot of dumb things. We played together, and we did silly things. We would play wiffle ball in the side yard, and we played paintball on the weekends. And it just seemed that everything we did, PJ was always better than me at. He was better than me in paintball. He was better when we did sports sort of things. We were in our friend Brandon's garage, and he had a foosball table, and we were playing foosball, and PJ just would destroy me again and again and again. We even made up games. You know those little plastic lemon juice things that you can buy in the store, and you squeeze it, just lemon juice? So we cut the nub off of that, and we use that sort of like a wiffle ball, but because it's like lemon-shaped, it flies really funny. There's no rhyme or reason to how it flies. It can corkscrew, and when you hit it, it spins end over end and whistles. And like, there's no way to be good at that, and yet PJ was good at that somehow. And then we were studying David, and we talked about David and Goliath and slings, and we looked up, even in modern day, like slings are used in the Middle East and what that meant, and we thought it would be fun to make our own slings. So our activity for the next week, you had 1 week to build a sling, and then we went to the rock pit in Sugar Grove, and we did our slings. His sling was better than mine, and it was so frustrating. I always felt like I was, for that season, I was inferior to him. He always seemed to be better at me in everything that we did, even things that were inconsequential. He somehow was still better. And that's what comparison does to us. It gets under our skin, and it makes us feel inferior. Pastor Andy Stanley has a phrase that he uses, and he calls it living in the land of Ur. E-R, and you'll see on the screen. And what it is when we look around, we see people who are richer, skinnier, smarter, taller, prettier, happier, cooler. If you're single, they are married-er. That's not a word, but that's what it is. Like, we have this idea that everybody has more than we have, and we want more We look at the they have, and we want that There's no winning in the comparison game, though. When we begin to compare in any of these ways, it robs us of our personal contentment. It destroys our contentment. It robs us of joy. It damages our relationships. It pushes our kids to secretly play out our dreams instead of fulfilling God's plan for their life. It causes us to celebrate other people's failures and makes us bitter and resentful and selfish. And this is a universal thing. This isn't a guy thing, and it isn't a girl thing. It isn't a junior high school thing. It isn't a parent thing. It's a people thing. And I would go as far as to say it's a sin thing. If we go back to the Old Testament, when God gives his people the Ten Commandments, one of the Ten Commandments is do not covet, which is looking at your neighbor and seeing what your neighbor has and wanting what your neighbor has. And I think That is significant that God, he only gives them 10, but one of those 10 things that he knows humanity is going to struggle with is looking at your neighbor and comparing what I have to what they have and wanting what they have. And we compare everything. We compare our possessions. That's an easy one. You know that. Like, I have a nice car. They have, more sheep than I do. I don't know what it is. We compare our possessions. We compare relationships too. Look at their marriage. They always seem so happy. I wish their friends were like my friends. I wish my friends were like them. They always seem to be having a good time. Look at their cute baby. Look at their kids. They're so athletic or they're so smart. We compare our appearances, our weight, our smile, our cheekbones, our hair, our nails, our dimples, and it's magnified because of the computer, of the social media, we see it all the time. We compare our abilities. When we're little, academically, you're given like a pecking order. That's what school does. It gives you your class rank, right? When I was graduating high school, they would tell you like what percentile you were in. Like you were in the 90th percentile. I never was in the 90th percentile. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's when you go to a sports team, and all those years that I coached Corbin, it took me 2 practices to realize where those players were. These are the good players, and these are the kids that need more of my attention. They need more work, right? And the kids knew it too. They could see they were ranking themselves. I'm better than that kid. I'm faster than him. I can kick harder than him. I have more skills than he does. We compare our achievements. Have you seen those stickers? I know you have in the back of people's van. My middle school kid is an honor roll student, right? Like we compare that. We want to say like, look at my kids. Like they're better than your kids. We compare our personalities. I wish I was more outgoing. I wish I had that bubbly personality. I wish I could speak in public. I wish I had more charisma, right? We compare our morality. Is that person well behaved? Are they squeaky clean? Their morality doesn't match mine, so they're either better or worse than I am in some way. And let's be real honest, we compare our faith. That person prays, when they pray, I just hear it. They're just better than me. They know more than me. They have more knowledge than I do. They can quote scripture. My brain doesn't work that way, and I have friends that they can just like rattle it off, and I'm like, man, they're so much better than me at that. I'm just not wired that way. They can say the right words, but they don't say the wrong words. They work harder. They have a position on council. We compare our faith too. And if there's not something that is obvious to compare, we'll find something, right? And in our generation, I already said it, with the internet, it's easiest. The space that we're living in right now is the easiest for us to compare ourselves with the rest of the world. We have the access on our fingertips. You can see pictures of people in Russia and China and Australia, and you can see the stuff that they have, and is it better than the stuff that you have? This past year of Zoom meetings, this is real. People are looking at your picture and they're checking out the room around you. What is the stuff that they have in that room? Students in school, as they're doing virtual school, they learned really early to turn their camera off because kids were bullying other kids for the stuff they had around them or didn't have around them. It's real. The thing is this, when we see that, when we look at those images, when we see all of that, what we're seeing is the best of someone else, right? It's their highlight reel. It's not their daily grind. It's not them with their makeup off. It's not them in the morning before they've had coffee. It's not them when they're yelling at their kids. It's them on a beach in a bikini, right? It's them climbing a mountain. It's them with their kids who just won a prize. It's their highlight reel. It's not real, but we believe it is. So let's look at this chunk of Matthew 6. I'll just read it again for you here. The eye is the lamp of the body, and if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. If your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? See, this part doesn't really make sense to us. It's not as obvious to us what's going on here. What's happening is this. Jesus is using a figure of speech. There's figures of speech that we have in the English language that they don't translate well to other languages, right? They're culturally ours. So let me give you an example. If I said to you, quit cold turkey, what do you think that means? What does that mean? It just means stop, cold, right? But in another language, when you translate that, quitting cold turkey doesn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? If I say to you, someone stabbed me in the back, they didn't really stab me in the back, but when you translate that, it doesn't make any sense, right? It's an expression that we use here. And the last one, plead the fifth. That only works in the United States because it's an amendment to our Constitution. When you translate that, when you take that some other culture to some other country, it doesn't really mean what it means. Do you understand? That's what Jesus is using here. He's doing the same thing. If you want to look in your Bible later when you have it, in this passage there are two footnotes that exist. One is by the healthy eye or good eye, and one is by the unhealthy eye or bad eye. And the footnotes say this: the healthy one means generous, and the unhealthy one means stingy. Okay, it's this expression, do you have a good eye or a bad eye? And it's still an expression that's used in Jewish communities. When you're going to donate to things, you would say this thing like, hey, we're having this food drive, make sure that you have a good eye. Meaning, make sure that you're being generous in giving what you have. There's only one other time that this phrase is used in the New Testament, and it's in Matthew chapter 20. It's a parable that Jesus is telling about a rich landowner who needs employees for the day. And so early in the morning, he hires some, and he says, I'm going to give you a day's wages if you work for me for the day. And then in the mid-morning, he hires another group of guys and says, I will give you a day's wages, 1 denarii, if you work for me for the day. And he does it again at noon, and he hires more at 3 o'clock, and he hires more at 5 o'clock. And at the end of the day, he gives each of them their denarii, and they're looking, and they're comparing with each other. And they're like, wait a minute, I worked 11 more hours than that guy. Why am I getting the same thing as he's getting? And then in verse 15, this is what verse 15 says. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my money? This is the landowner talking to these men. Or are you envious because I am generous? So this phrase, that envious, in this one, they translate it to be envious. And they could have translated, do you not have a bad eye? It's the same language. They just chose to translate it in the context of what it actually means here. They know what the context around it is, so they translate it that way in this situation. The phrase is all about comparison. These guys are comparing their paycheck for the day, and they're saying this isn't right. And it's part of what we looked at last week. Accumulation becomes comparison. If I have more, I look better. I need more so that people will see. I need more so that I have status. Comparison destroys our contentment. Instead of being satisfied with what I have, if I buy something new, instead of being like, look what I have, I love that, I then look at somebody else who has one that's bigger or shinier or better, and I'm not as satisfied with what I already own. You know that that's true. It robs us of our joy. It damages our relationship. Comparison works against generosity. Those are the two words, the healthy and the unhealthy. They're in conflict with one another. They're opposing ends of the scale. They're constantly we're constantly trying to have what we don't. Let me start that again. We're constantly trying to get what we don't have instead of being focused on this radical generosity that Jesus calls us to. The healthy eye and the unhealthy eye. Are you stingy or are you generous? Last week I had to go to the doctor, and it wasn't anything. My yearly checkup or whatever. But for my health checkup, the way that he checked my health was he asked me questions, right? You know that when you go see the doctor, they say, how are you? How's this going? And how's that going? And so this morning we're going to do a quick little health checkup for you. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Here's number 1. How do you find yourself feeling when good things happen to other people? Are you genuinely celebrating their achievements, their success of other people at the school, at their job, in your family? Are you proud of them? Are you happy with them? Are you celebrating with them? Or are you saying things like, it sure must be nice. She is the teacher's pet. Mom likes him better. Right? Here's question 2. How do you find yourself feeling when bad things happen to other people? Maybe not everyone, but maybe that one person or that one couple or those people there. Maybe their life isn't so perfect. They finally got what's coming to them. It's funny that it didn't happen sooner. We celebrate someone else's failure. How are you with that? Let me offer you 2 solutions to the comparison problem. And I told you last week, I don't have the answers to this. I'm not an expert at this. I compare like you do. I look at God's Word and I'm trying to give us all, myself included, some guidance here and some things to think about. So let me propose to you 2 solutions here. The first one seems really, really simple, and it's this. Fix our eyes on Jesus. Hebrews chapter 12, 1 and 2, it says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Not the race marked out for somebody else. Not the race marked out for our neighbor. Not the race marked out for our family or our brother or our sister. For us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. We want to reduce our preoccupation with stuff. And the way to do that is to have a preoccupation with Jesus. I know that seems really simple. I have this friend, Jim, and he just to every situation, he just goes, people just need Jesus. Everything we talk about, he shrugs his shoulders, he goes, people just need Jesus. And it's really simple, but it's right. If people were preoccupied with Jesus, if we were preoccupied with Jesus and God's values, we would have no time to compare what our neighbor has. And the second is this. We said it, the good eye and the bad eye. The opposite of comparison is generosity, and we need to practice it. Are your eyes healthy? If you're generous, your whole body, it says, will be full of light. I don't know, that sounds like something I want to be a part of. I want my body to be full of light. I want to be generous. My whole life is fuller when I am generous. Let me leave you with this today. Every year, at the end of the year, at the end of the school year, St. Joe's School takes a day and they go to Waldameer. And it's a family trip and we all go. And for us, it usually marks the beginning of summer for us. It's like the kickoff to summer and we all have this great day together. A few years ago, when Corbin was still in St. Joe's, we went and we spent the day. Tobiah really wanted to ride the big kid rides. But when you get there, they have this little guy that you have to stand against this board, right? And there was one particularly, the bumper cars. If you want to ride by yourself, you have to be this tall. And they measured him up, and he wasn't tall enough. He had to ride with me, and he didn't want to ride with me. Dad had to drive because my feet could reach the pedals, and his couldn't. He wasn't tall enough. And we've heard, some of us have heard these things our entire lives, that we're not tall enough or we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not athletic enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not strong enough, we're not whatever enough. We are not enough. You've heard it. Maybe people have told you it. Maybe you've told yourself it. It's just a voice that you hear. I want to leave you today with this, that God, the creator of the universe, says, you are my child. You are my son. You are my daughter. And you are enough. Stop listening to all the outside voices that might tell you, might make you believe that you are inferior. Those voices in your head. You are the workmanship of the creator of the universe. You are created to do what only you can do here on earth. You are enough. like stuff, we want more, and we look at our neighbors or our friends or our family, and we compare ourselves to them. God, would you work even now on our hearts and in our heads? We want a good eye. We want to be generous. We want to be focused on you. Would you help us to refocus our attention, refix our eyes on you? That if we have a preoccupation on you, we don't have as much time to compare ourselves to others. God, would you come and work in us, change us, mold us to be more like you? Grab our attention, maybe in a new way this week, God. We ask this in your name. Amen. Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Amen. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen and amen. Have a good week.